beyond. I'm Hermelina Powell. I work in student services in Mendoza graduate programs. And on behalf of our Thrive Networking team, we're so glad that you're able to join us for this workshop. I would like to have my team to go ahead and introduce themselves as well from the networking committee.
Hi, I'm Kara Primer. I'm the chair of the Professional Development and Networking Committee for Thrive. Carla, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Carla Seiler. I'm also a member.
Hello, I'm Idanika Verse. Good to see everyone.
All of us. Okay, and of course, I'd like to introduce our presenters today that we are very privileged to have to share with us. Martin Johnson, who is Associate Director of Graduate Business, Career Development, and Career Coach. Martin, do you want to wave? Okay. And he's joined by Tara Taylor, Associate Director of Graduate Business Career Services. There's Tara. And Lindsay McIntyre, Associate Director of Graduate Business and Career Development. Okay, so we're going to have a 30 minutes of presentation, and afterwards there'll be an opportunity to network over breakout rooms if you so desire. And we'll go ahead and get started. Martin.
All right, thank you very much, Hermelina, and the rest of the Thrive Executive Committee. It's an honor for me to be here, and I'm sure that Lindsay and Tara are honored just as well. We're here to discuss networking. Just a little bit about my background. As you mentioned, Hermelina, I am a career coach working in career development for Mendoza. And one of the things that we work with students on is the power and the impact of networking. And it's so important for job search, but it can be used in so many other ways. My background, I come from over 25 years in financial services and educational supply sales. And most of my career has been spent doing a lot of networking, a lot of wining and dining and that sort of thing. So I do think that I am uniquely qualified to present on this subject, but by no means am I an expert. It's one of those things where you're continually learning and growing in this particular area. So I'd like to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll jump right into it. I do have several slides. We'll probably be here for the next 4 hours. I'm just kidding. We won't be here that long, about 30 minutes. But if we have a lot of questions, a lot of discussion, we may or may not have time for breakouts. So why don't we go ahead and dive in? Why don't we go ahead and dive in? Just one moment. Okay, so today's agenda. First thing we're going to address is the elephant in the room. We'll talk a little bit about the types of networking, why networking matters, and networking basics, and then, if there's time, the breakout rooms. So the elephant in the room, what is it when it comes to networking? Anyone have any input on the elephant in the room about networking? Maybe Tara or Lindsay, you have any ideas?
I think that most people just don't enjoy doing it. They find it difficult to get started.
Definitely. Let's take a look.
Yeah.
Here are some things regarding networking that is the elephant in the room. And you mentioned it. There's denial, reluctance, avoidance, awkwardness, silence. And why is it? Why do people have these feelings about networking? Anyone?
I think, go ahead.
I was going to say maybe imposter syndrome, like I don't want to sound dumb, or I don't know the lingo of whatever space I'm in, like an outsider, so to say.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I think if you're an introvert or an extrovert, it's one thing to be social, but if it's just kind of an event where you know that you're going to meet people, or you have to be social, but there's nothing following, like that, it's for people that like to have more of an in-depth conversation, it can be very hard because you're just surface most of the time in networking. So I think that's easier for extroverts, and when you're an introvert and you like to have like relationships and build relationships, it can be a little bit hard and overwhelming to go in and keep surface level conversations going, and to not, even know where to start sometimes.
Yeah.
And I
I think a
also
lot
think
of,
that,
go ahead.
yeah, no, I was also going to say, I think that some people may think of it as being like it's forced. It's not natural.
It's not genuine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like my kids said, I don't like to have forced fun, and people have a negative connotation to networking. So that's the one thing we do have to kind of get out of our mind, is that it's not negative. And we spend so much time networking in our daily lives, but it's because we're primarily interacting with people we already know that we just don't consider it networking. So here are the types of networking. Definitely online conversations, whether it's through social media like LinkedIn or Snapchat, Facebook, that sort of thing. There's also one-on-one meetings and group events. I would suggest that most people have a much harder time in group events than they do one-on-one and online. At the bottom of this screen, you can see the definition of networking: an exchange of information or services among individuals, groups, or institutions, specifically the cultivation of productive relationships for employment or business. So I think if we focus more on building relationships as opposed to I'm going in there and networking. I always think of networking like, I don't know, I consider this negative thing about used car salespeople and salespeople when I think of networking. And I think a lot of people say, I'm not a networker because I'm not, a slickster or that sort of thing. So we just got to get that out of our minds. So why does networking matter? Well, when it comes to jobs and careers, 70% of positions were landed through networking, and only 8% landed through job board applications. And you can also see the statistics there for recruiters. And I would challenge most people on this Zoom call to just think about the jobs that you've had and the ways that you got those jobs. And in many cases, people I talk to, they can point to, well, I joined the company because a friend of mine joined and they told me about an opportunity. Or I used to work with someone, they left the company, they went to the new company and told me about opportunities. Or I shared with people, I just got out of school, I was looking for an opportunity and someone told me you should call so-and-so. So I think we all can point to networking as being important. Can anyone co-sign on that for me? Tara, have you experienced getting jobs through networking and people, that you knew?
Yes, absolutely. I can remember leaving. My boss went to a different, my boss at a previous company went to another company, and he told me about an opportunity, interviewed for it, and I got the position. So, and I definitely agree with you. It's only been a couple of jobs in my career that I've gotten just by submitting an application. Once I got my MBA, I would say that pretty much every job has been through making a connection and following through with it.
All right. I often ask students who I'm coaching to tell me a little bit about their past and how they got certain jobs. And many of them indicate that it was because of a friend or someone they knew. Prior to coming to ND, I worked for a very large career coaching firm, Lee Hecht Harrison. And most of the people I worked with were senior executives and mid-level managers. And it was like 80% of them would say, yeah, I got this job because somebody left and they went somewhere else and told me you should come over here, and that sort of thing, or through relationships at church, or through the parents of their children's friends and that sort of thing. So I think, we can all agree that it does make a difference. So,
can I add something,
yes,
Martin? Sorry,
please.
I wanted to chime in. And it's not just about jobs. I mean, I think for those of us, if you have children or, families, that sometimes it can be something, my son is interested in acting. And so by networking, I learn a lot about different programs. I know Patrick in our office is also into acting. And so he has sent me some links of things that could be helpful for Sam. And that's how we've found resources. So it's more than just jobs. It can be, networking can really give advantages in a lot of areas of your life.
You are so right. And I really appreciate you bringing that up, because there may be people on this call who are very happy in their position and see themselves being here the rest of their working lives. And so it's not about, well, I'm not looking for a job. Why do I need to learn how to network? So there's a lot of opportunities in our personal lives where networking can help. So several weeks ago, I was here in the office, by myself, and a gentleman was walking through looking with a clipboard, and he's looking around, and he introduced himself as the building manager. And I thought, man, building manager, he must know a lot of people who know how to fix things, because I need a door fixed at home. And I asked him, and he says, there's a guy who retired from ND who started a handyman business. You should give him a call. And his name is Jim Merkel. And I called Jim, and Jim is now scheduled to come fix a door at my house. So that was networking, but it wasn't like, hey, I had to introduce myself and do a elevator pitch. It was just simply reaching out and, sharing a particular need. So this slide here says, you probably know the basics of networking. And I am sure that several of these basics we're going to share, you've already heard these a million times. But the big difference is actually implementing, right? The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. So this is what we're going to focus on. So these are 7 principles, the basics of networking, and there's no right or wrong. These are just what I have found have been some basics that work. So the first thing is you need to do it all the time. It has to become, it doesn't have to be like from day one, but over time, it has to become a part of who you are. If you only network when you need to, you're not going to be successful. And most of the time when you need to network, if you wait until you need to, it's too late. And a lot of my experience comes from working with people who are networking for jobs. And a lot of the people I worked with had been at a company 10, 15 years, and they didn't do any networking while they were at work. And now all of a sudden they're out of work and they don't have a strong network. But just think, if you are a continual networker, you would then have a network of people to reach out to and say, hey, I just got let go, or I'm moving to this city. Who do you know there? So this is why it's important to be consistent. And we'll share with you today some ways that you can make networking just a regular part of your daily activities. All right, the next one, give first. Give value to other people before asking for something. I think one of the issues with people being hesitant to networking is they feel like, oh, well, I haven't stayed in touch, I haven't reached out, and now I need something. I need a favor, or I'm trying to get information, and it doesn't feel like I should be doing this because I haven't stayed in touch. So give first means it can be anything. It can be your time, your energy, education, favors, information, anything. But if at all possible, give first. So, I'm doing this workshop with my colleagues here, and I'm giving value. And I hope that someone on this call, if I reached out and needed a volunteer or needed some help, I would be able to get a positive response, because what I'm doing right now is a form of networking by giving first. Give more than you take. Build up the network bank as much as possible before taking withdrawals. You can do this simply by sending articles to people. Remembering birthdays is a big one. In my household, I remember birthdays all across all of our friends, all of the nieces and nephews, all the kids. And I think people really value having their birthday remembered. Send a text saying hi. Invite them to events or inform them about interesting opportunities. These are just many forms of giving and giving first. So you have to build the bank of goodwill and earn a reputation of being a giver. Do any of you have ideas of people who come to mind when you think about people who are givers? You don't have to name any names, but can you think of people in your lives?
I was trying to think, Martin. You said giving presentations. I can think of someone that I worked with who did a lot in terms of community service. I mean, so always at things, whether it's toy drives or food banks, doing things at church. Also was a person that gave a lot of presentations, not only inside of our organizations, but externally. And one of the biggest networkers that I know, he probably would not have labeled himself that way, but he often gave. And as a result, people wanted to give back to him.
All right.
I was going to say the same thing. I've got people in my life too that will check in with me on a regular basis, and it makes me want to reciprocate that and send me things that they know that I might like pictures or videos that are funny. And then I also have, someone that I've worked with years and years ago that never forgets my birthday. She sends a card every year, and then cards periodically throughout the year. And it's just something. There's something about a handwritten card, and I'm really bad about it. But there's just something so special about receiving that. So I think those things are really important and just go a long way to people.
Yeah. And this one bullet that says send a text of just saying hi. So this past weekend, I was on LinkedIn and I was going through my network, and I saw a student who's graduated that I worked closely with last year. And I just sent a message through LinkedIn that said, hey, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Just wanted to check in and say hi. And I got back from him 2 paragraphs on, man, the job is going well. I'm really settling in. So glad to hear from you. Hope you and your family are doing well. And that's all it takes to incorporate networking. I didn't do it with any other motive other than to check in with him. But, in the back of my mind, it's also, these are people that I have spent time with. I want to see how they're doing. And, because I have been a networker for so long, I do realize that, 2 years from now, I might want him to come do a presentation for students. But it's much easier to make that ask if over these 2 years, I stay in touch with someone. Okay, let's move on. So do it live. Networking is all about building lasting relationships. So as much as possible, I would suggest doing your networking in person or over the phone or video, as opposed to just emails and just text messages. I believe that if you have kind of built up the personal relationship, even after 1 or 2 meetings, then it's much easier to send a text or send a chat or email, because you've built the foundation. One of the things that I really appreciate about ND is when a new employee starts at the school or in the college, I notice that there are emails that go out that introduce the new person, and people are encouraged to reach out and say hi and welcome them. And one of the things that I've been doing is emailing that new employee and saying, hey, welcome aboard. When you have some time, let's get together. So last week, I recently had lunch with the new head librarian, and it was fantastic. In fact, when it was announced that he was coming to the university, I emailed him once he got his ND email address. So I emailed him in early August. And then around Labor Day, I said, he's a new person in town. Maybe he doesn't have family. I invited him over for Labor Day. He didn't come, but it's the thought that counts. So I ran into him on campus and I said, Dr. Dames. And he's like, who are you? And I said, I'm the guy that invited you for Labor Day. And he said, oh man, that was great. Sorry, I couldn't make it, blah, blah, blah. But we then had lunch last week. So these are just things that you can do to incorporate, once again, networking in your daily activities. And now that I've met him in person, had an opportunity to have lunch, now I can send an email or a chat and that sort of thing. Okay, always follow up. When you do get together, whether it's a group setting, one-on-one, it's important to always follow up on what you say you were going to do as a result of that meeting. So do what you say you're going to do. This is a way of building trust, whether it's providing them with some information, making a referral, whatever it might be. Just make sure that you are known for having a good word. You want to be known as being trustworthy and dependable. This is what helps strengthen you as a part of the network. We oftentimes have students who are networking as a part of their career search. And invariably, we do hear back from alumni from time to time that, hey, I asked so-and-so to give this person a call. I checked with that person to see if the student called and they never called. So this is something that will immediately mess up your reputation in a particular network. Pay it forward or move it forward. Help the people in your network expand their network. Who do you know that they should meet or get to know? Be willing to introduce people in your network to each other. So if I know that Lindsay's kids are into acting and I happen to know someone who's an actor, I should say, hey, Lindsay, you should have your kids get to know so-and-so, or you should introduce them to this person. That's just a way of paying it forward and moving the network forward. Tara, any insight on this particular basic point?
What I would like to add to this is, I totally agree with it. I mean, pay it forward or move it forward. And I would say, a lot of times we're thinking immediately about the people that we know that's right there in our circle. But be open-minded and realize that you can network with anyone, and you never know who knows someone else. And sometimes what I see is people discounting other people, and saying because maybe they're not in this position or they don't have this title that maybe they're not going to network with them. But you want to embrace everyone and realize that you may have something to offer them, as well as they may have something to offer you. So just be open in the relationship as you're building these relationships. Have an open mind.
All right. We'll keep going. So the last basic point is you have to have a systematic plan. So I want to give you some insight on putting a systematic plan together. First of all, you have to have a goal. As Lindsay mentioned, it's not always about getting a job, but I've listed here some common goals of networking. Of course, job search, getting your message out. Maybe you are someone who works for a nonprofit and you just want to get the word out. Maybe it's gathering information or educating yourself on a particular topic. hey, I'm getting ready to do a remodel. Do you know anybody who has gone through this before? Oh yeah, so and so. Dana Marsh over there just fixed up a house that was left to her, and she knows all about remodels. Camaraderie. Maybe you're new to a town. Your goal is to build some friendships. Maybe it's to meet insiders at targeted companies or get in touch with decision makers. Maybe you're in sales and getting in touch with decision makers is important. But you have to have a goal for networking, and these are just some of the common ones. Once you have your goal in place, then it's all about research. Who can help you move towards that goal? Who might they know, or who should I know that might be able to move me forward? Forgive my typos here. It's all about building a relationship map. So I wanted to show you this idea of a relationship map. So you could think about other professionals that are involved in your line of work, obviously friends, people you meet at networking events, customers and vendors, Notre Dame alumni from your undergrad, or former colleagues. You could visually put something like this together that would trigger in you, okay, who do I know in these particular categories, okay? Once you've kind of laid out your map, then it's time to start thinking about your contacts and list a minimum of 5 contacts in every category. So if you recall, I'll go back. If you recall this particular map, think about 5 to 10 people in each of these categories. So before you know it, you have 50, you have 100 particular names. Once you collect a list of people, identify 60 to 100 that you can reach out to over the course of a year. Now, once again, this depends on your goal. You may not need a whole year to reach out to people if your goal is to, find a great school for your kids to attend. But if over the next year or two, you want to start a business, it may take you a year to identify and get the people in your life that can help you with this particular goal. At the beginning of each month, select 5 people to reach out to by sending messages or making a call. So out of these 60 to 100 people that you've identified that you'd like to reach out to over the year, think about just 5 per month. I'm going to send a message to these 5 people in hopes of getting together either over the phone or in person, or inviting them to an event or something like that. And so then the next step is we have to draft some messages. So the messages you draft are goal dependent. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. Even the goal of, I just need to build my network. I need to re-engage and stay in touch with people more. So your goal and your message could be aligned. Your messages can be via phone, email, or in person over coffee or drinks. The tone of your message can be cordial or formal depending on your level of relationship. But I think you should basically come up with a few base templates so that you're not having to reinvent the wheel for every message. And using your template, then you can tailor the rest of the message depending on who you're reaching out to and what your goal is for the message. And then this is the final piece, is to execute your plan. Steve Jobs said, "To me, ideas are worth nothing unless executed. They are just a multiplier. Execution is worth millions." So I'd like to stop there. Maybe we can open it up for discussions and maybe have time for some breakout for those who would like to practice some of the things we've talked about.
Martin, just to your last point, I would like to add that, this is a great time to connect with people over these holidays. And last year, I actually set a goal for myself to reconnect to 20 people. And it was so rewarding to reestablish those connections, get to find out, what people are up to these days. And I've maintained that network. And this year I'm setting a goal to connect with another 20 people. And so I definitely love the monthly thing, but I find myself this time of year, I'm just kind of reflecting and wanting to reconnect in a different way as well.
Thank you. Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
To echo that, I'm kind of doing the same thing. I've recently, as I think about the next year and setting some goals, I've made a list of people that I want to either reconnect with or stay connected with, and just thinking, being more thoughtful about them and the things that they like, or the things that, writing down their birthday and putting a note on my calendar to make sure I follow up with that. So I like that, Tara, and that suggestion, Martin, to really be more intentional. I think that's what it's all about.
Definitely. Anyone else in the audience or on the call have, just a question about some of the things we saw? Like, how do you, at a group setting, how do you go up and introduce yourself? I will share one thing before we open it up. I'm wearing an ND pin. You may not be able to see it too clearly, but I'm also wearing a red pocket square. And one technique you can use when you are in group settings is to wear something that pops, whether it's a stylish, really sharp pair of shoes, or a red pocket square, or an emblem. And it's going to be something where someone who gets within 5 feet of you will say, "Oh, you work at ND? Are you a professor?" I get that all the time. Or, "Wow, I really like that pocket square." And, the next natural thing is, "Hey, what brings you here?" It just allows the ice to be broken much smoother or much more easily.
I have a question, not so much on how to start the conversation. I think once I work up the courage, I can do that. My awkwardness begins in how to transition and ease the conversation to a natural end point. Does anyone have any advice on that? I'm an introvert.
So are you saying that the getting into the conversation is not as hard? It's like how to end it.
Yes, yeah, without getting all awkward, and then people are like, "Well, that was weird."
Right. Yeah. Well, one of the things I would say is a technique is, "Hey, I'm sure you want to meet some other people here today. It was a pleasure meeting you." And then, good luck, that sort of thing. Or, "Wow, this was great." And it also depends on if you want to continue at some other point. So one of the things I'll say is, "Hey, are you on LinkedIn? Can you connect, or would you like to connect on LinkedIn?" And you can get a vibe or a feel for if someone, if the conversation went well and if they're inclined to say yes. But people are starting to gather, and you've talked to this person for maybe 10 minutes. It's time to move on. And that's where you could say, "Hey, I'm sure you want to meet some other people. This has been great. I'll see you later, or talk to you later," something like that. Any other suggestions?
I would say going back to the move it forward piece, think about who else you can introduce them to that's in that room. And so you connect them to someone else, and you excuse yourself while you go get some refreshments or something.
Yeah.
I was going to say, always excusing yourself to go get refreshments, or excusing yourself to go to the bathroom, but I wouldn't do that a lot. Otherwise it could become awkward. I am like that, though. I will say I struggle because I like to get into conversation with people, that I tend to be the one that will stand there with one person for the longest time. And then I notice that sometimes keeps them from networking. So just being aware of it, I think, is part of the solution. And then just finding ways to, I see someone over there that I really wanted to catch up with, and then establishing next steps is good.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
No problem. One of the things that I also suggest is, if you are going to a function that's been labeled a networking event, it's okay when you get there to, say to people, hey, so you're here for networking. Tell me about yourself. Why were you interested in coming tonight? And another thing, I try to get to those kind of events early, because as people trickle in, you can start having many conversations with those folks as they arrive. It's much harder to come to one of those events and people are already in pairs or in threes. And like, how do you break into the conversation without kind of hovering, So it really pays to come early. And generally, for those kind of events, the organizers, who tend to be the most important people, are there early anyway, and that gives you an opportunity to meet some of the most important people at the function if you come early.
And I think that reverts especially because you find it even more difficult to break into groups that are already established. So getting early gives you an edge.
I have a quick question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about like personal experiences, and I've always found it really hard to make that like first connection, especially if people are already talking to each other. Or if I've been doing something else, like if it's an event that I've been helping set up, then I'm kind of preoccupied with that, and then to go back and then try to network. So is there like one really great way to like break into a conversation with someone without being totally awkward?
Well, this is you asked for just one. And one that I learned is, so I'm coming up to a person and they, we meet, I make eye contact, and I'll say something like, what brings you here today? Or what's going on in your world? Or how's your day gone? Just those simple little things, can get the conversation going. So it doesn't have to be a grand scheme of anything. It's like, hey, what brings you here today? Or what's going on good in your world? Or what's the good news? And just be quiet and let them start,
I think too, Kara, I always look for if there's two people talking, but I can't remember where I saw it a long time ago. You can tell if there's like a closed circle or an open circle or an opportunity to kind of step in. If two people are talking, you can't find where to go. I always will tend to just look for something that seems like it's open and someone that's really telling a story or talking, and then just start listening. And I found myself so many times when I start listening, then I can just kind of get actively engaged in the conversation. And then when there's a pause and say, oh, by the way, I'm Lindsay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your conversation or join. And it just kind of breaks the ice a little bit if you're if you're stuck and not knowing where to go. Just find something that looks like it's more open in a conversational way. And I think the other thing I was going to add really quick, networking is awkward, I think, for everybody. I don't know that there's anybody that would say it's so natural. I love doing it all the time. Like, I think that it's as humans, if we don't know people, it can be, I go back to the first day of school and the anxiety you have over like networking with people when you're a kid. And so I think that just knowing that everybody feels the same way can just kind of take some of that edge off too.
And I would just add that I usually avoid when it's just two people talking, so like Lindsay's saying, I look for maybe those groups of 3 to 4 people, because 2 people, it's kind of like maybe there's an intimate conversation going on and they may be discussing something that they wouldn't want a third person to join in on. But groups of 3 to 4 tend to be safer and kind of ease in, like Lindsay mentioned. And also for myself, I tend to, if I know I'm going to a networking event or if I'm networking for a job, I try to make it fun for myself. And so I may wake up that morning and just kind of say, okay, who am I going to meet today? So that I'm a person, I like to, I have curiosity, and I don't look for a specific outcome. When networking, I just try to be open and see where that conversation goes and where that relationship will go. But to get me motivated, I say, who am I going to meet today? And I look forward to that.
Yeah, that's one thing. you don't always have to have this super diabolical scheme of why you're networking. You kind of go and, kind of see where things take themselves. Like, for instance, tomorrow is the Mendoza Christmas gathering reception. There's going to be a lot of people there that I haven't met yet. And so I just plan on kind of walking around, and I can just go up to people and say, hey, I don't think we've met. I'm Martin Johnson. Now, that's not super easy for everyone. But one of the things I learned, that if someone comes within your kind of personal space, you should always at least try to say hello or introduce yourself, particularly if you make eye contact. And a smile goes a long way. And just think about that, that personal space of 2 to 3 feet. I strike up conversations with people in lines at the grocery store, shopping. It does come easy for me once I'm there. But I'm one of the first people to, when someone says, oh, there's this event, the first thing that comes to mind is I don't really want to go, because I do get anxious about meeting people. But once I'm there, I'm good about overcoming the anxiety and just introducing myself. All right, so it's 12:41. Hermelina, do you want to create some breakout rooms and people can kind of discuss some of these topics on their own?
Sure. Yeah, this was a great question and answer session. And thank you so much for the presentation, Martin and Tara and Lindsay, for chipping in with that. I think this has been really helpful and useful. So for those of us who want to continue and just maybe a small group setting, let's do that. I think, Cara, you're